They expect you to snap. They expect you to take the bait, lash out, explain yourself, prove something. The world is wired to provoke you. Notifications buzzing, people testing, chaos pressing in from all sides. It's built to shake you, to make you move without thinking, speak without clarity, feel without control. But what if you didn't? What if, in the middle of all that noise, you could just be still? Not because you don't care, but because you've trained your mind to respond instead of react. Because you've anchored yourself in something deeper than impulse. That's what Stoicism teaches us. That your power isn't in what you do when things are easy. It's in how you hold your center when everything around you is begging you to lose it. And in a world that profits off your emotional chaos, your calm becomes rebellion. Your self-control becomes strategy. Your stillness becomes strength. So if you've ever felt like your peace is too easily stolen or your emotions too easily hijacked, this is your moment to reclaim that power, not by fighting harder, but by standing firmer, by mastering what the Stoics call the only true domain of power, your inner world. If you're ready to build that kind of strength with me, not just for show, but for your soul, please subscribe to follow a path back to yourself. Let's walk it together. 1. Don't react on cue. There's a certain silence that unnerves people more than any scream ever could. You've probably felt it, the kind of silence that makes others shift in their seats, talk more than they should, or try harder to get under your skin. It's not emptiness, it's control. The reason some people fear your stillness is because they can't manipulate it. They don't know what you're thinking, how you'll respond, or if you'll respond at all. And that uncertainty? It exposes their need to feel dominant, to pull you into their game where they feel safe, where they know the rules. But here's the truth. Most people don't want connection when they provoke you. They want compliance. They want your energy, your time, your reaction. And the moment you give it, you hand them the script. You become a character in their scene, not yours. There's this quiet strength in pausing, not just biting your tongue, but actually seeing the situation for what it is, someone trying to pull you out of your peace. You don't need to swing back. You don't need to prove that you're smarter, wittier, or tougher. All you need is to not play. Because every time you respond out of impulse, out of that gut instinct to defend yourself, you're actually stepping into someone else's frame. You're reacting on their timeline. You're proving you can be summoned, triggered, poked into motion like a toy with buttons. And the cost, your energy, your dignity, your clarity. Calm isn't the absence of emotion, it's the presence of mastery. It means you know exactly what you feel, but you've trained yourself to decide if it needs to be expressed, and when. It's like walking through fire without letting the flames touch your skin. You feel the heat, you acknowledge it, but you don't flail. You don't let the world see you burn. You hold the line. And in that stillness, people start to see something they can't control. That's when they either respect you or reveal themselves. Either way, you win. Think about how often people throw little traps your way. The sarcasm slipped into casual conversation, the jokes that aren't really jokes, the compliments that somehow sting. These aren't accidents. They're tests. They want to know, will you flinch? Will you fight? Will you try to make them feel bad for trying to make you feel small? And most of us fall for it. We want to correct them. We want justice. But what we really want is for them to admit what they did. And that rarely happens. So instead of closure, we get frustration. Instead of clarity, we get caught. Again, Stoicism teaches us something powerful here. You are responsible for your response, not their action. That space between what they do and how you react, that's your entire kingdom, and you either guard it or you abandon it. Epictetus once said, If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. That hits hard, doesn't it? Because it shifts the focus from blaming them to disciplining you. It's not about letting people walk all over you. It's about choosing how and when you respond, because not every attack deserves a war. Some things aren't worth the cost of your serenity. There's a deep kind of dignity in not explaining yourself to people who are trying to misunderstand you, in not wasting your clarity on someone who's only interested in your confusion. When you stop reacting, you stop bleeding energy into every small insult or sudden mood swing that someone throws at you. You start choosing your moments, and when you speak, it actually means something, because your words aren't scattered like panic, they're placed like stone. And look, this isn't about being cold or emotionless, it's about being anchored. Calm doesn't mean you let things slide that matter. It means you decide what matters enough to break your silence. It means you can sit in discomfort without needing to lash out just to feel powerful. You can let someone else throw their tantrum, say their piece, even insult you, and still stay rooted. Because your identity isn't built on their approval, and your peace isn't borrowed from their validation. It's yours, built from the inside. You'll notice something wild when you stop reacting. People don't know what to do with it. They get louder. They get meaner. They start accusing you of being distant or fake or too calm. Why? Because your stillness highlights their chaos. Your quiet shows them how loud they really are. Your self-control reflects back their lack of it. And that mirror, it's uncomfortable. But you're not here to make others comfortable at the cost of your own integrity. This is especially true in close relationships, family, friends, even romantic ones. The people closest to you know your buttons. They know your old patterns. They expect you to react the same way you always have. So when you don't, it disorients them. And sometimes it makes them push harder. But you're not who you used to be. You're not here to prove anything anymore. You're here to live in alignment. And part of that is deciding that not every battle is worth your breath. Not every slight deserves your explanation. Some things just get a shrug and silence. This silence, though, it's not passive. It's deliberate. It's strategy. It's discipline. It's knowing that your time, your mind, and your heart are valuable, and you're not giving them away to people who haven't earned access. Because when you train yourself to not react, something shifts. You stop being a puppet, and you start being a presence that doesn't rise to bait, a presence that doesn't need to match energy, a presence that feels untouchable. But let's be real, this takes practice. It takes failing at it. It takes moments where you do react and regret it, where you say too much, where you let them pull you back into old habits. That's part of the path. Every time you get pulled out of your peace, it's just another chance to build it stronger, to notice the trigger faster, to pause a little longer. And slowly, your reactions turn into responses. Your silence stops feeling like swallowing emotion and starts feeling like owning your power. And power, in this form, isn't loud. It's not a flex. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's about being better for yourself, more stable, more focused, more at ease. Because you've stopped giving away your energy like candy at a parade. You've started conserving it for what truly deserves it. Your growth, your purpose, your peace. You've become someone who can walk into a storm and not become it. Someone who listens more than they speak. Someone who pauses, not because they're afraid, but because they're calculating. There's also a quiet compassion in this. When you stop reacting, you start seeing clearly. You realize that most people's attacks come from fear, insecurity, or pain. They're not always trying to hurt you. They're trying to manage their own chaos, and you're just in the blast radius. That doesn't make their behavior okay. but it helps you release the need to fight every time. You can step back, not just in strength, but in understanding. That's when your calm becomes wisdom. And when you hold that kind of calm consistently, people notice. Not just the ones trying to provoke you, but the ones watching you, learning from you. Your presence starts to teach others that it's possible, that maybe they don't have to lose their mind every time life presses in, that maybe stillness is an option. That's how peace spreads, not through lectures, but through example, through the silent discipline of someone who refuses to be baited, someone who knows they don't need to react on cue because they are no longer an actor in someone else's play. They are the director of their own, and that's where your power lives. 2. Let silence do the talking. There's something about silence that makes people uneasy. Not the kind of silence when you're alone in nature or curled up reading a book, but the kind that happens between people, in a conversation, in an argument, in a room full of tension where one person chooses not to speak. That kind of silence feels loud, uncomfortable, confrontational even, and that's exactly why it's so powerful. We live in a world that teaches us to fill every second, to respond instantly, to explain ourselves before anyone even asks. But what if the strongest move isn't to speak louder, but to say nothing at all? Silence unsettles people who need chaos to feel in control. Some folks rely on noise, the back and forth, the drama, the endless commentary, to feel like they're winning. Because as long as you're talking, defending, explaining, they know where you are. They can track your emotions. They can predict your next move. But when you go quiet, you become unpredictable. And that unpredictability exposes their insecurity. They start wondering what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you might say, or worse, what you won't say. It's not the absence of noise that disturbs them. It's the presence of composure. Silence is not weakness. It's not surrender. It's not avoidance. It's discipline. It's the decision to step out of the storm instead of becoming part of it. You don't need to argue to prove you're right. You don't need to interrupt to be heard. And you definitely don't need to explain your every move to people who've already made up their minds. Some things don't need clarification. Some people don't deserve an answer. Let your actions speak. Let your absence speak. Let your stillness become a message so clear it doesn't need words. When you sit in silence long enough, something fascinating begins to happen. People fill the void. They talk too much. They repeat themselves. They reveal things they didn't mean to share. That's when the mask slips. That's when their intentions, fears, and insecurities spill out. Not because you forced them to, but because your silence made them uncomfortable enough to expose what's really inside. And you just listen. You observe. You collect the truth without lifting a finger, because the person who listens sees more than the one who speaks. This idea runs deep in Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on human behavior, once wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." It's not just about refusing to fight. It's about refusing to lower yourself. It's about maintaining your inner order while someone else tries to throw you into disorder. Because when you stay silent, you're not just avoiding drama. You're refusing to give up your peace. And that choice, over time, becomes your reputation. People start to know you as someone who doesn't rise to petty arguments, someone who doesn't need to win the noise game to be heard. Now let's be honest, silence takes strength, especially in a world where the loudest voice often gets the most attention. When someone accuses you of something, your instinct is to defend yourself. When someone misjudges you, your first urge is to set the record straight. But here's the hard truth. Most of the time, defending yourself won't change their mind. It'll just exhaust you. And if someone's committed to misunderstanding you, no explanation will ever be enough. That's when silence becomes not just a tool, but a shield. You stop bleeding energy for people who aren't listening anyway. You also stop giving people emotional shortcuts. See, when you react quickly, especially with anger, sarcasm, or defensiveness, you make it easy for people to label you. There it is, they think. There's the real you. But when you go quiet, they don't get that closure. They're left wondering. And that wonder, that confusion, that's powerful, because it puts you in control of the tempo. You're no longer dancing to their rhythm. They're sitting there, tapping their fingers, waiting on you. And the longer they wait, the more they reveal about their own need for control. Silence also gives you the space to reflect. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every feeling needs to be shared. In silence, you get clarity. You get time to figure out what's really going on. Before you say something you'll wish you could take back. Carl Jung once said, "Silence is a source of great strength." That's not a metaphor. That's a psychological truth. When you withdraw from the noise, you withdraw from manipulation, confusion, and external pressure. You return to your own center. That's where your wisdom lives. That's where you remember what actually matters and what doesn't. Think about how often we use words as armor. We talk to defend ourselves, to justify our choices, to soften awkwardness. But sometimes words get in the way. They complicate what doesn't need to be complicated. They dilute truth. They invite confusion. There's a reason Stoics valued brevity, because clarity thrives in simplicity. And sometimes the clearest thing you can do is say nothing. There's also a spiritual quality to silence. It allows you to witness, not just what others are doing, but what you're doing, your patterns, your triggers, your impulses. When you're always talking, you're always reacting, but in silence, you begin to observe. You start to understand. That's where real self-awareness is born. It doesn't come from more noise. It comes from stepping back and watching your own mind without judgment. That's Stoicism in practice, not just being calm, but seeing clearly through the storm. Of course, some people will be bothered by your silence. They'll accuse you of being distant, cold, rude. But that says more about their discomfort than your boundaries. Don't let guilt drag you into the noise you walked away from. You're not responsible for managing other people's discomfort with your peace. And if someone truly values your presence, they'll learn to sit in that stillness with you, not demand you fill it for them. In relationships, this can be transformative. When you stop rushing to respond, when you let silence settle instead of forcing the next word, you create space for real connection, for truth, for pause. You stop reacting out of fear and start listening out of care. You stop performing and start being. That kind of presence is rare. That kind of presence is healing. There's also a tactical strength in silence. In negotiation, for example, the person who speaks less often holds more power. In confrontation, the one who stays calm usually sees the path out before the other even realizes there's a choice. In leadership, silence shows restraint, it shows control, and it earns trust because people don't follow noise. They follow direction, they follow clarity, and clarity comes from silence first. But remember, silence doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It means owning it. You can feel deeply and still choose to say nothing. That's not repression, that's mastery. And the more you practice it, the more you'll realize that silence is not empty. It's full of patience, full of strength, full of everything the noise is trying to distract you from. Eventually, people start to understand, not because you told them, but because your silence made them listen. Your silence taught them how to treat you. Your silence reminded them that some energies can't be matched, and shouldn't be. Because your calm isn't just a mood, it's a message. It says, I know who I am, I know what I stand for, and I don't need to shout it to prove it. That's the kind of silence that shifts the room, that disarms arguments, that breaks cycles, that protects peace, that teaches without preaching, that leads without forcing. And once you tap into that kind of silence, you never unlearn it. It becomes part of who you are. A quiet, steady presence in a world that's forgotten how to breathe. So the next time you're tempted to speak, to defend, to fight for your voice, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is this moment asking for noise or for presence? Because silence, when used with wisdom, speaks in ways noise never could. And when the world around you starts to shake, your silence becomes the anchor that holds everything in place. 3. Praise is a soft trap. We all like being recognized, don't we? A compliment here, a pat on the back there. It feels good to be seen, appreciated, acknowledged for the hard work we put in. We've all experienced that rush when someone tells us we're doing a great job, that we're smart or talented or something else that boosts our self-worth. But here's the thing that most people don't realize. There's a fine line between feeling good about a compliment and needing it to feel good about ourselves. And once you cross that line, praise becomes a soft trap, one that slowly starts to pull at your self-esteem and your sense of worth. At first, it's subtle. You might brush it off, or laugh it off, or even deny it a little. It's just a compliment. No big deal. But then it starts to happen more often. Maybe at work, maybe with friends, maybe even from strangers. At some point you notice the smile on your face doesn't feel quite as real unless someone gives you that positive feedback. It starts to feel like you need it. And that's when the trap closes. Because now, your worth is attached to external validation. You're no longer standing on solid ground. You're floating, waiting for the next compliment to keep you in the air. The Stoic path, however, tells us something different. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Think about that for a second. The happiness of your life doesn't depend on what others say about you. It doesn't depend on whether or not you get noticed. It depends on what you tell yourself. The world can praise you or criticize you, but the Stoic understands that neither should define them. Praise and flattery are like sunshine, nice when they come, but not something you rely on to survive. They're external forces that change with the weather. If you base your happiness and self-worth on them, you'll always be at the mercy of the weather. And believe me, it's unpredictable. So what happens when you get attached to praise? You start performing for approval. You begin shaping your actions and decisions around what others think of you, rather than around your own values or principles. You're no longer acting because it's right. You're acting because you want to hear those words again. And here's the real kicker. When you perform for approval, you're giving up your power. The moment you start relying on praise for your happiness, you lose the ability to truly live authentically. You become predictable. You become a person who only does what gets them noticed, instead of doing what aligns with their values. You see, the Stoics teach us that your actions should be driven by inner virtue, not external rewards. We act because it's right, not because we want others to notice. When you live in accordance with your values, your actions are solid, they're rooted. There's no need to perform for the world. You are who you are, no matter what anyone else thinks. Praise becomes something you accept, but don't cling to. You appreciate it as a reminder that you're on the right path, but you don't rely on it to guide your steps. This mindset isn't about rejecting all praise or saying you never need recognition. It's about creating a foundation so strong that no compliment, no matter how glowing, can shake your sense of self. Carl Jung spoke about this idea of inner strength when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To truly become who you are, you have to detach from the opinions of others. You have to let go of the need to be validated by external sources. When you stop performing for the approval of others, you open up space to actually be who you are. You become self-actualized, living from a place of internal clarity and authenticity. The people who praise you aren't the ones who determine your worth. You do. When you live from this place of self-truth, praise becomes just a fleeting moment, not a permanent fixture of your identity. But what about criticism? Well, it's much the same. If you let criticism define you, if you take it as the truth about who you are, then you've given up your control. You're letting the world dictate your emotional state. Stoicism teaches us that criticism, just like praise, is an external force. It's someone else's perspective. And if you rely on others' opinions for your self-worth, you'll always be at their mercy. Criticism, too, can't define you. It's a reflection of someone else's perspective, not your truth. The goal is to develop an inner clarity where neither praise nor criticism has the power to make you feel less than or more than you are. In this way, you begin to build true emotional resilience. Praise and criticism will always come and go, but your sense of self should be anchored in something much deeper. When you let go of the need to please others, you reclaim your power. You no longer bend to the whims of praise or the sting of criticism. You stand firm in your own truth, and from this place, you can act in alignment with your values, not your ego. Think about the last time someone praised you. How did it feel? Did it make you feel like you were on top of the world? Or did it feel like a fleeting moment, something that quickly faded once the next person said something else? Praise feels great in the moment, but relying on it leaves you always chasing that next high. The key is not in avoiding praise altogether, it's in understanding its role. Praise, like criticism, is just noise. It's something that exists outside of you, and when you make it central to your happiness, you lose yourself in the shuffle. So, how do we shift? First, we have to learn how to detach from the need for approval. When someone praises you, thank them, but don't let it take root. Acknowledge it, but don't hold on to it. Let it flow through you, not into you. Recognize that your worth doesn't depend on how others see you, but on how you see yourself. By internalizing this mindset, you free yourself from the trap of constant validation seeking. You start to live for yourself, not for the applause. Second, we need to develop an unshakable sense of self. This comes from understanding who you are, independent of external recognition. When you stop wasting your time performing for others, you create more space to live authentically. You stop getting sidetracked by the opinions of others and focus on what truly matters, living in alignment with your values. This means making decisions based on your own principles, not because you want to be liked or praised. And when criticism comes, as it inevitably will, don't be shaken by it. Remember, it's just a reflection of someone else's perspective. It says more about them than it does about you. You don't need to defend yourself or explain away your actions. Stay rooted in your inner clarity. When you stop trying to prove yourself to others, you stop giving them the power to diminish you. Instead, you maintain your peace. You stand firm in your own identity. As you walk this path, praise and criticism will no longer have the same power over you. You'll begin to appreciate them for what they are, temporary, fleeting moments that have no real bearing on your worth. Instead, you'll start to recognize that true fulfillment comes not from external validation, but from aligning your actions with your values and principles. That's the true path to peace, the Stoic path. You are the one who gets to decide your worth, not the world around you. So, smile, nod, and keep walking. The applause doesn't define you. Your inner peace does. 4. Slow down. When the world speeds up. There's a strange thing that happens when chaos takes over. It doesn't just make things louder or messier, it makes everything move faster. People start talking in a rush, texting like it's a race, demanding decisions like the clock is about to run out. It's as if the world itself begins to spin a little faster, pushing everyone along with it. But here's the kicker. None of that speed is real productivity. It's panic disguised as urgency. It's the noise of everyone scrambling, trying to act like they're getting somewhere, when, in fact, they're just speeding toward mistakes. The real skill, the true power, comes when you decide to slow down. And that doesn't mean pausing everything completely. It means taking control of your pace while the world tries to pull you into its frenzy. In Stoic philosophy, the concept of slowing down isn't just about reducing speed physically. It's about creating inner stillness. When everything around you is rushing, you can be the one who stays rooted. Instead of reacting to the chaos around you, you move in deliberate, thoughtful steps. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. When the pressure builds and people around you are sprinting, that's the moment to pause and consider the next move. That's when you gain clarity. You stop being swept away by the current, and instead you navigate with intention. You stop reacting and start choosing your response. Think about it. How often do you find yourself making hasty decisions because everything feels urgent? How many times have you agreed to something, sent off a message, or made a choice because you felt like you had no time to think? It's like a race where the finish line keeps moving. That's not urgency. It's anxiety, dressed up as productivity. We've all been there. Someone sends an email with urgent in the subject line, and immediately the mind kicks into gear. The pressure starts to mount. Your heart rate picks up. And before you know it, you've jumped into something without considering the consequences. But slowing down, it's the antidote. The calm mind knows how to handle that pressure. It doesn't give in to the rush. Instead, it chooses to move with purpose, taking one step at a time, carefully placing each foot, making sure it's the right move. Carl Jung once said, "Hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil." Think about that for a moment. We often think that speed is synonymous with efficiency, with productivity, with getting things done. But Jung, in his profound wisdom, suggests that it's not. It's a trap. And when we rush, when we give in to the frantic pace of the world, we lose ourselves in it. We lose the ability to think critically, to make decisions that are in alignment with our true values. When everyone around us is racing to the finish line, we have to remember that we don't need to be in the race at all. Our power is in the decision to move with intention, not with speed. There's also something deeply powerful about seeing what others miss when you move slowly. When everyone else is frantically trying to get ahead, you start to notice things they don't. You catch the details that get lost in the rush. You hear the things that aren't said. You feel the things that are overlooked. That's the strength of a calm mind. It sees more because it's not in a rush. Think about how often we make mistakes when we're speeding through our tasks, just trying to check off the boxes. We don't give ourselves time to think, time to question, time to evaluate. But when you slow down, when you take a moment to breathe, you suddenly see all the things that were just out of reach in the blur of speed. You notice the nuances in a conversation. You catch the inconsistencies in an argument. You can see the consequences of your actions before they play out, and because of that, you make fewer mistakes. In a world that demands more and more of our time, slowing down is an act of resistance. It's not laziness, it's strategic. It's not hesitation, it's discipline. The more you learn to slow down in the face of urgency, the more you begin to master your circumstances. It's like being a calm observer in a storm. You're watching the chaos swirl around you, but you're not swept away by it. You move with purpose, with clarity. You understand that the race is not as important as the choices you make along the way, and as you move slowly and thoughtfully, you'll find that the world around you begins to change. People start to notice your composure. They start to respect your ability to stay grounded, and that's when you realize just how powerful calm can be. Stoicism teaches us that external events are out of our control, but our responses are always within our power. In a world that wants us to speed up, to react without thinking, to rush from one thing to the next, the Stoic path is to slow down, to observe, and to respond with purpose. When life throws chaos your way, the most powerful thing you can do is take a deep breath, pause, and think before you act. The power of the calm mind isn't in resisting the storm, it's in choosing how to navigate through it. When you slow down, you start to see the world differently. You begin to realize that you don't need to compete with the world's rush. You don't need to get caught in the frenzy. Instead, you find your own rhythm, your own pace, and in that rhythm, you become unstoppable. The most remarkable part of slowing down is that it doesn't just benefit you, it changes the way others see you. The people who rush, who react impulsively, who make snap decisions, they're easily influenced, easily manipulated, easily thrown off course. But when you slow down, when you take control of your pace, you become a force to be reckoned with. You become the calm in the storm, the one who stands firm while the world spins around them, and that, in itself, is a powerful message. It sends a signal to everyone around you that you are not moved by the chaos. You are not moved by their urgency. You are in control of your own actions, your own decisions, your own mind. And that is the ultimate strength. There's also a quiet elegance in slowing down. Think about how many times you've rushed into something only to realize later that you missed something important. Maybe you rushed into a conversation and said something you didn't mean, or you made a decision too quickly and had to backtrack. The beauty of slowing down is that it gives you the space to make decisions with wisdom, not haste. It allows you to step back and evaluate, to question, to reconsider. And when you take that time, your decisions are stronger, more thoughtful, and more aligned with your true values. You stop acting out of fear, out of impulse, out of pressure. You start acting out of clarity, out of conviction, out of confidence. So next time the world speeds up, take a moment to breathe. Slow your pace, feel the tension loosen, and realize that in doing so, you're not just avoiding mistakes, you're making space for wisdom. You're choosing to move with purpose, not to be swept along in a current that doesn't serve you. You're showing the world that while they're rushing toward the finish line, you're calmly walking your own path, confident that the journey is just as important as the destination. 5. Watch what people do, not what they say. It's strange how easy it is to believe someone when their words line up with what we want to hear. We get drawn in by kindness, impressed by promises, and sometimes even comforted by apologies. But words, as beautiful and convincing as they can be, are cheap. They can be rehearsed, shaped, and served in just the right tone to hide what's really going on. What truly reveals a person isn't what they say, it's what they do when no one is watching, or when things aren't going their way. That's where the truth lives, not in the moments of calm, but in moments of pressure, silence, and discomfort. That's when patterns begin to show. And once you begin to see this, really see it, you can't unsee it. You start to notice the difference between what people say they value and what their actions actually show. You catch the little inconsistencies. The friend who says they support you, but always finds a way to shift the conversation back to themselves. The co-worker who talks about teamwork, but disappears when there's actual work to share. The person who says they love honesty, but only when it doesn't challenge them. None of this is accidental. It's a pattern, and patterns don't lie. Stoicism teaches us to separate appearances from reality, not just in the world around us, but in people. It urges us to develop a calm mind that isn't swayed by charm or hooked by smooth talk. Because the Stoic understands that reality isn't in what's said, it's in what's repeated. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You should be more straightforward and simple, and not disguise your thoughts." That idea extends outward too. When we learn to observe others with clarity instead of bias or hope, we stop being deceived by surface impressions. We begin to live in truth, not in illusion. Carl Jung once pointed out that you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. That statement is sharper than it seems, because when we accept that truth, we not only begin seeing others more clearly, we also begin holding ourselves to the same standard. Watching behavior becomes a mirror. You start catching your own contradictions too. Where do your actions fall short of your words? Where have you promised more than you delivered? This isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. Awareness is what gives you the power to grow, but when it comes to others, that same awareness is what protects your peace. The mistake most people make is trying too hard to make excuses for behavior that doesn't match the talk. They're just going through something. They didn't mean it like that. They said they're trying. And while compassion matters, so does discernment. There's a difference between someone stumbling and someone showing you a pattern. And once it's a pattern, it's not confusion anymore. It's a choice. When someone repeatedly shows up late, breaks promises, dismisses your concerns, or avoids accountability, they're not making a mistake. They're making a statement. You just have to be calm enough to listen. When you detach from the emotional noise, you start collecting evidence, not to build a case, but to see clearly. The Stoic doesn't react to every word. He watches. She listens. And in doing so, she sees the whole picture. Over time, you'll learn that actions don't just show character. They are character. The way someone handles responsibility, the way they treat someone they don't need, the way they speak about people behind closed doors. These are the real indicators, not their apologies, not their affirmations, not even their reputation, because habits never lie. And here's what's wild. Once you stop being impressed by words, your relationships start to change. You become harder to manipulate, harder to deceive. Not cynical, just clear. Because clarity breeds calm. You no longer argue with people trying to convince you of who they are. You just watch. You don't need to call them out or prove a point. You simply adjust your expectations to match reality. That's emotional maturity. That's Stoic discipline. And the more you do it, the more you protect your peace. But it takes strength. It's easier to believe the fantasy, to keep hoping someone will change, to hang on to what they said instead of dealing with what they did. Hope can be blinding when it isn't grounded in reality. And Stoicism doesn't teach us to give up on people, but it does teach us to be honest with ourselves about who someone is, not who we wish they were, not who they say they want to become, but who they consistently show up as. There's also a freedom that comes with this shift. When you stop investing energy in analyzing every word and start focusing on what's consistent, you reclaim mental space. You stop spinning your wheels trying to decode mixed messages. You stop feeling disappointed by unmet expectations. You start to accept what's in front of you, not because it's perfect, but because it's true. And truth, even when it hurts, is always more useful than a comforting lie. Seneca reminds us that he suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary. How often do we suffer emotionally because we expect someone to be what they're not? How often do we feel betrayed not because someone changed, but because we refuse to see who they really were from the beginning. That kind of emotional pain is avoidable if we learn to trust patterns over promises, if we learn to stay calm long enough to observe rather than react. This principle applies to all areas of life, in business, in friendship, in love. Watch how people behave when they don't need something from you. Watch how they act when the spotlight is off, when no one's watching. That's who they really are. Someone can have all the right words, but if their actions don't align, their words are meaningless. And it's not about being harsh, it's about being grounded. When you accept that behavior is the clearest language a person speaks, you stop being confused by the rest. It also helps you hold boundaries better, because once you see a pattern, you can respond with clarity instead of emotion. You can say, "I've noticed this," and make a decision based on facts, not feelings. You stop needing an apology to validate your experience. You stop waiting for someone to explain what you already know. You stop hoping for closure from people who never offered clarity. And that alone creates a kind of peace that no conversation ever could. This isn't about walking through life suspicious of everyone. It's about walking through life awake. Awake to who's showing up. Awake to what's real. Awake to the fact that most people tell you who they are over time, if you're willing to watch instead of listen. That's the gift of observation. It gives you the ability to step back from the noise, to see the patterns, and to make decisions not from fear or pressure, but from wisdom. And in the end, that's what the Stoic life is about. Not emotionless detachment, but wise engagement. Being so rooted in truth that you no longer get thrown off by sweet talk or dramatic exits. You just nod, take note, and keep walking. Because peace isn't found in what people say, it's in what you accept as reality. And the more you live by what you see, the less you'll suffer from what you hear. 6. Accept what could go wrong. Life can be unpredictable, and sometimes it throws things at us that we never saw coming. One minute everything's going well, and the next you're blindsided by a problem you never anticipated. It's easy to panic in those moments. In fact, most people do. They get hit by the unexpected and immediately start reacting out of fear. It's almost like being thrown into a storm without any preparation. And the worst part, they're so caught off guard by the pain that they let it control them. They don't know how to manage it, so they get lost in it. They become victims of their own emotions. But there's another way to live, one where you prepare for the worst, not because you want it to happen, but because you refuse to let it define you when it does. The Stoic philosophers were masters of this idea. They understood that life wasn't about avoiding pain or discomfort. It was about how we handle it when it inevitably comes. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." What he meant is that pain and difficulty are part of life. They will come, no matter how much you try to avoid them. But the quality of your life, the peace you maintain, the way you move through hardship, depends on how you prepare yourself mentally. It's not about pretending everything will be fine. It's about mentally preparing for the moments when things go wrong, so when they do, they don't throw you off track. Most people walk through life expecting everything to go smoothly, and when things fall apart, they panic. They get overwhelmed by emotions, and before they know it, they're drowning in stress and anxiety. They didn't expect failure, so when it comes, it feels like the end of the world. But those who are calm in the face of hardship, those who've taken the time to mentally prepare for the worst-case scenario, are able to navigate the storm with a clear mind. They've already walked through the worst in their minds. They've faced the idea of loss, of failure, of betrayal, and they've accepted it. Not because they wanted those things to happen, but because they knew they could handle it if they did. You see, when you mentally prepare for what could go wrong, You stop being a victim of it when it happens. You can't predict every detail of your life, but you can choose how you react to it. The calmest people are the ones who've already mentally rehearsed the challenges that might come their way. They know that suffering and setbacks are inevitable parts of the human experience, and they're not afraid of them. In fact, they embrace the discomfort as part of their growth. This doesn't mean they seek out pain or failure, but they accept that these things are simply part of life's cycle. And because they've accepted this, they remain steady when challenges arise. Carl Jung spoke of the power of confronting the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we try to ignore or push away. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This idea ties directly into accepting the worst that could happen. You don't gain strength by pretending everything is perfect. You don't become emotionally resilient by ignoring the possibility of failure. Instead, you become strong by acknowledging your fears, by confronting the worst-case scenarios in your mind, and by accepting that they are within the realm of possibility. By doing so, you develop the mental fortitude to face anything that comes your way. This doesn't mean you should dwell in negativity or prepare for disaster at every turn. It's not about living in constant fear of what could go wrong. It's about preparing your mind to be unshaken when it does. It's about accepting that you can't control the outside world, but you can control your reaction to it. If you constantly run from the possibility of pain, you live in fear of it, and that fear holds you back from truly living. You become anxious and paralyzed by the what-ifs. But when you accept the potential for hardship, you stop being afraid of it. You stop fearing the unknown. Instead, you're ready to face it with clarity, strength, and resolve. When you embrace this mindset, you begin to approach life with a quiet confidence. You don't get rattled by every little hiccup. You don't let setbacks define you. You're prepared for them. And when they come, you face them with a calmness that surprises even yourself. This doesn't mean you don't feel the pain or frustration, but it means you don't let those emotions take control of you. You don't let them dictate your next move. You stay grounded, because you've already mentally prepared for this moment. This is why the Stoics talk so much about inner resilience. They weren't interested in avoiding pain. They were interested in how to face it without being broken by it. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This is an important point. Most of the fear and panic we feel in the face of hardship comes from imagining the worst outcome, not from the actual event. We build up a story in our minds about what will happen, and that story is often worse than the reality. By mentally preparing for the worst, you remove the fear of the unknown. You stop imagining the worst and start focusing on what you can control. And when the real pain comes, you'll see that it's rarely as bad as the fear you built up around it. When life hits hard, the calm mind moves with purpose. There's no hesitation, no panic. You've already envisioned the storm. You've already prepared for it. So when it arrives, it's almost as if you've been here before. The calm mind understands that life isn't about avoiding difficulties. It's about learning to handle them. When you're mentally prepared, your actions become clear and decisive. You stop wasting time in uncertainty. You act with the confidence that comes from knowing you've already imagined the worst, and you can handle it. That's how you stay unshaken. By mentally preparing for failure, loss, and pain, you free yourself from fear. You stop living in resistance to what might go wrong and start living with the knowledge that you can face anything life throws at you. You've already walked through the worst-case scenario in your mind. So when it happens, you don't flinch. You don't crumble. You simply face it with the steady resolve of someone who knows they can handle whatever comes next. Life will throw its curveballs. People will disappoint you. Things will not go as planned. But if you've accepted that from the beginning, you don't have to panic when it happens. You can stay calm, collected, and ready to move forward. When you accept what could go wrong, you take the power away from fear. You stop being controlled by the fear of the unknown and start living with the confidence that you can handle whatever comes your way. This is the essence of Stoic resilience, not avoiding hardship, but facing it with grace, wisdom, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing you are ready for whatever life may bring. 7. Hide your hunger. There's something almost intoxicating about announcing your goals. You feel that rush of excitement as you share your ambitions with others, the pride that comes with speaking your dreams into existence. But here's the thing most people don't realize. When you shout your goals from the rooftops, you're often distracting yourself from the real work. The more you talk, the less you do. The more you announce your plans, the more you invite external pressure and expectations into the mix. You let the noise of others' opinions get in the way of your focus. In a world that constantly demands validation, there's power in staying silent, power in letting your results speak for themselves. In Stoic philosophy, there's a concept that is crucial to understanding why this works. The idea that your worth is not determined by others' approval. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reflected deeply on the dangers of seeking external validation. He said, "Don't hanker after what you don't have, but think of the things you do have, which millions of people would envy." This idea speaks directly to the heart of ambition. So often we get caught up in the idea that success is defined by others seeing our effort, by them acknowledging our journey. But real Stoic ambition isn't about impressing others. It's about staying focused on the work itself. It's about finding value in what you're building, not in how it looks to others. Think about the times when you've been overly vocal about your goals. At first it feels good, right? People nod their heads, they congratulate you, and maybe they even offer their advice. But here's the catch. The moment you announce your hunger, you invite distraction. People start questioning you. They become invested in your journey, offering unsolicited feedback, or even worse, waiting for you to fail. They start tracking your progress, waiting for that moment when you slip. Why? Because they don't know the real effort behind your goals. They don't see the sweat, the late nights, the sacrifices. They only see the shiny announcement you made. And in that space, you start measuring your progress by their standards instead of your own. The Stoic path tells us to avoid that trap. Don't seek validation from others. Don't get distracted by the applause or the criticism. Instead, stay focused on the journey itself. Work in silence. Move forward with discipline and steady effort, and let your results do the talking. This doesn't mean you never share your vision with anyone. It means that you understand that the real work, the part that matters most, is done quietly. The true power of ambition lies in consistency and discipline, not in shouting your intentions to the world. What if part of becoming who you truly are is recognizing that you don't need to broadcast every step of your journey to feel validated? What if you could take that energy, the excitement of sharing your goals, and direct it inward instead? What if your energy could be spent creating instead of talking about what you want to create? When you stop announcing your hunger for success and start working quietly toward it, you begin to embody that success long before the world notices. You grow into it. And when the world finally catches up, the results will speak for themselves. It's not about pretending to be indifferent. It's about removing the need to constantly prove yourself. That hunger you feel for success doesn't need to be broadcasted. It doesn't need to be validated by likes, shares, or comments. It just needs to be nurtured through consistent action. The Stoics believed in quiet resilience, doing the right thing because it was the right thing to do, not because it earned you a reward or a pat on the back. When you understand this, you stop relying on others to recognize your work. You realize that the true measure of your progress lies not in others' opinions, but in your own growth and commitment. When you don't announce your goals, people around you begin to misunderstand you. They might mistake your silence for indifference or a lack of ambition. But this is where the magic happens. The moment people think you're indifferent is the moment they let their guard down. They stop measuring you, stop waiting for you to prove something. They no longer scrutinize your every move. And that's when you can get ahead. Not by loudly declaring your intentions, but by letting your actions speak louder than words ever could. Imagine for a moment that you're working on something big, something that will take months, maybe years to achieve. Now, picture yourself telling everyone about it. You'll be met with excitement at first, but soon the comments start coming in. Some people will cheer you on, while others will throw their doubts your way. People will start expecting results right away, and the pressure builds. And what happens? You start working toward their expectations instead of your own. You become distracted by their opinions, by their approval, or worse, by their doubt. But what if you kept that hunger to yourself? What if you worked diligently, quietly, without seeking permission or validation? Your progress becomes your own, and in time, when the results are undeniable, the world will recognize your effort. Stoicism teaches us that the path to true success isn't in seeking praise or avoiding criticism, but in accepting both without letting them control you. A person on the Stoic path works not for accolades, but for the intrinsic satisfaction of doing the work. When your ambition is aligned with your values, you don't need to announce it. You simply pursue it with purpose. Your focus stays inward, your discipline strengthens, and your work becomes the reflection of who you are, not who you want others to think you are. The temptation to seek praise is real. It feels good to hear that people see your potential, but remember this. When you perform for applause, you are no longer performing for yourself. You're performing for others' expectations, and that changes everything. When you silence the need to be praised, when you focus solely on the work and let the results speak for themselves, you find a deeper, more lasting satisfaction. Your hunger for success becomes internalized. It's not about being seen, it's about becoming who you are meant to be. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." This speaks directly to our tendency to waste time seeking external validation. When we get caught up in trying to prove ourselves, we waste time that could be spent building. Instead of filling the world with words, fill it with actions. Focus on the process, not the recognition. When you stay grounded in your purpose and keep working in silence, you will not only avoid distractions, you will build something real, something that will last, and in the end, your results will speak volumes. Ambition, when rooted in Stoic principles, is calm, steady, and powerful. It's not about the noise. It's about the quiet discipline that moves forward without fanfare, without needing to be seen. The journey may be long, and the work may be hard. But when you keep your hunger to yourself, it grows stronger with each step. You don't need validation. You don't need applause. You need only to stay focused and true to your path. And in time, the world will see the fruit of your quiet labor. 8. Don't chase instant justice. There's a primal urge inside all of us to defend ourselves when we feel wronged. Someone insults you, belittles your efforts, or cuts you off in a conversation, and your immediate reaction is to strike back. You want to put them in their place, make sure they know they crossed a line. You want justice, and you want it now. The problem is, rushing to fix things in the heat of the moment often doesn't lead to real resolution. Instead, it feeds the cycle of reaction. It turns into an emotional tug-of-war where no one really wins. This isn't justice, it's just noise. And in the midst of that noise, we lose the chance for real impact. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't rush to defend their honor or battle every insult thrown their way. Stoicism isn't about being passive or letting people walk all over you. It's about being patient, calculated, and understanding that true justice doesn't need to be immediate. It's built over time, and often the best way to approach a slight is to pause, reflect, and allow your actions to be the true response, not your words. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, said Marcus Aurelius. His words remind us that we don't need to mirror the aggression of others to maintain our dignity. By holding your ground in silence, you don't lower yourself to their level, you rise above it. When someone disrespects you, the natural instinct is to react. It's a deeply ingrained habit. Society, and especially modern culture, tells us that we have to defend ourselves, that we need to fight back whenever our pride is hurt. But the truth is, instant justice doesn't bring peace. It brings more conflict. If you rush to set things right, you'll only find yourself caught in a cycle of reaction and escalation. The more you try to correct the wrong in the moment, the more you invest emotionally in the conflict, and the less you see clearly. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to not react, to step back, take a breath, and let the situation unfold before responding. This isn't cowardice, it's wisdom. It's the quiet strength of someone who knows they don't need to prove their worth through every argument or challenge. Carl Jung understood the human desire for validation and the need to protect our ego. He said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." What Jung was pointing out is that our reactions often say more about our own insecurities than about the person we're reacting to. When someone disrespects you, it's easy to jump in and defend your honor. But instead of reacting immediately, consider what that moment reveals about you. Why does it bother you so much? What part of you feels threatened? This kind of introspection is what leads to true personal growth. Instead of chasing after instant justice, use that moment as a mirror to reflect on yourself and your own responses. The Stoic mind knows that justice isn't about proving your point in the moment. It's about understanding your emotions, holding your peace, and acting from a place of strength, not reaction. When we rush into the battle of words, trying to win the argument or expose the flaw in the other person's logic, we're not engaging in real justice. We're engaging in a power struggle. And those power struggles, no matter how much we think we win, only drain our energy. True justice, the Stoic version of it, is quiet. It's thoughtful. It's not about making a point, but about making a lasting impact. It's about having the clarity to wait for the right moment and then acting with precision, not emotion. When you remain calm and composed in the face of disrespect, you gain more than the temporary satisfaction of proving a point. You gain respect, the kind that comes from being unwavering in your integrity. Think about how often we let our emotions drive us to act in ways that don't serve us. You get into an argument, and before you know it, you've said things you didn't mean. The moment you give in to the impulse to react, you've already lost control. You've let the other person dictate your emotional state. And now, instead of being the one in control of your response, you're reacting to theirs. The beauty of Stoic calm is that it allows you to step outside of this emotional feedback loop. You're not chasing justice immediately, but instead letting it come in its own time. You're not letting your emotions be the puppet strings that control your actions. You're taking a step back, recognizing that real justice is rarely immediate, and that patience often leads to the most satisfying outcomes. You might be thinking, but what about standing up for myself? What about not letting people walk all over me? And the answer is, you don't have to. But the Stoic approach is different from the traditional notion of standing up for yourself. It's not about fighting every battle. It's about choosing which battles are worth your energy. When you react emotionally, you're giving your opponent control. You're giving them the power to push your buttons. But when you pause, when you wait, when you let them think they've gotten away with it, you are the one in control. Your calm, your silence, becomes a weapon. It is the ultimate power move. They expect you to retaliate. They expect you to prove them wrong. When you don't, it unsettles them. They don't know how to react to someone who doesn't need to prove anything. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Most of the pain we experience in moments of disrespect is not from the actual words or actions of others, but from the anticipation of how those words will affect us. We imagine the worst. We fear the loss of respect. We believe that we need to defend ourselves to protect our dignity. But the truth is, when we can sit with the discomfort and let the storm pass, we see that it wasn't as bad as we imagined. We see that our peace, our dignity, wasn't really under threat at all. It was simply our reaction to the moment that caused the suffering. By not reacting immediately, you give yourself the space to see things clearly, and that is where true strength lies. Think of a time when you didn't react immediately to someone's harsh words. Maybe you let the silence linger. Maybe you gave yourself the time to think before responding. In that moment, you took control. You didn't let the other person's behavior dictate how you felt or how you would act. That's the power of Stoic calm. It's not about being passive or weak. It's about mastering your emotions and recognizing that most conflicts are temporary. The longer you wait, the clearer the path becomes. When you choose to stay calm, you give yourself the chance to respond with wisdom, not impulse. True justice, then, is not about getting back at someone, about correcting them in the moment. It's about seeing the bigger picture and choosing not to be swept up in the emotional drama. It's about understanding that while you may not be able to control what others say or do, you can control how you respond. And sometimes, the best response is to say nothing at all. You don't need to defend your honor. You don't need to prove your point. You don't need to get justice now, because in the long run, it's not about who won the argument in the moment. It's about who remained calm enough to act when the time was right. And that, my friend, is a victory that no one can take from you. 9. Budget your emotional energy. Most of us don't realize how much we spend without thinking. Not money, emotions. Every time we react, every time we let someone get under our skin, we're making a payment. Maybe not in dollars, but in something far more valuable. Our energy, our focus, our peace of mind. The truth is, your emotional energy is a limited resource. You wake up with a certain amount each day, and how you spend it determines everything. Who you give your attention to, what you allow to drain you, what you choose to let slide, and what you fight for. But if you're not aware of your emotional spending, you'll end up exhausted, frustrated, and wondering where your peace went. It starts small. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and you carry the irritation for hours. A passive-aggressive comment at work lingers in your head all day. You replay an argument in your mind 10 different ways, rehearsing what you should have said. None of these things are life-threatening. None of them are emergencies. But they drain you. And the worst part? Most of the time, the other person has already moved on. You're the one still paying for it. That's the trap. You hand over your emotional paycheck to people who didn't earn it and don't deserve it. And at the end of the day, you're left with nothing but fatigue and regret. Stoicism gives us a way out of this cycle. The Stoics believed that our inner peace should never be up for grabs, that what we feel and how we respond is entirely within our control, no matter what others do. Epictetus, a man who had every reason to be bitter, said it best. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. That line cuts deep, because when you react without thinking, when you let someone else decide your mood, you've handed over control. You've let someone else decide what your day will feel like. But the Stoic path isn't about being emotionless. It's about knowing where to invest your emotions. Like a wise investor, you don't throw your resources into every situation that comes your way. You choose what's worthy. And most things, they're not. Think of your emotional energy like a bank account. Every time you argue with someone who just wants to argue, you're making a withdrawal. Every time you obsess over something you can't control, you're writing a check you can't cash. And just like with money, if you don't budget wisely, you go bankrupt. Not financially, but mentally. You become reactive, anxious, drained. You have nothing left for the people who matter, for the things that deserve your energy, because you spent it all on things that didn't. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." When we react emotionally to every little thing, we feed those moments more power. We resist the discomfort, so it lingers. We fight the insult, so it grows. But when you budget your emotional energy, you start to see things differently. You stop needing to respond to every comment. You stop feeling obligated to fix every misunderstanding. You let things go, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know the cost. And the cost is real. Every reaction has a price tag. Time you'll never get back. Focus that could have gone into your work. Patience that could have been used on your family. Sleep that could have restored you. When you blow up over something trivial, you're not just losing your temper, you're spending your peace. And for what? To prove a point? To win a debate that won't matter in a week? The more you ask yourself, is this worth the expense? The clearer your decisions become. You start walking away from things not because you're avoiding them, but because you've already done the math. That's what calm really is. It's emotional wealth. It's what you carry with you when you don't spend your reactions on things that don't matter. It's not about being numb or indifferent. It's about valuing your peace so much that you protect it fiercely. You wouldn't give your last dollar to someone who insults you, so why give them your inner peace? Why let their behavior bankrupt your day? This shift in perspective doesn't happen overnight. At first, you'll still find yourself reacting. You'll still get pulled into arguments or let a stranger's tone bother you. But with time, you start catching yourself. You start recognizing when you're about to spend energy you don't need to spend. And then you pause, you breathe, you ask, is this worth it? And slowly, those small pauses become habits. Those habits become patterns. And those patterns shape a life that's calm, focused, and deeply grounded. Seneca reminds us, no person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have, and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have. Apply that to your emotional energy. You may not be able to control everything that happens to you today, but you can control what you want to invest in. You can choose to protect what you have, your attention, your peace, your focus, and use it wisely. You can cheerfully walk away from nonsense and still feel like you won. And once you begin living like this, it changes everything. Conversations become lighter. Disagreements don't derail your day. You stop chasing people for closure or validation. You stop needing to prove yourself in every room. Why? Because your emotional bank account is full, and you're not looking to make change with people who can't afford your peace. That calm you carry isn't weakness. It's value. It's something you've earned by not reacting to every little thing, by choosing your peace over proving your point. This is where real strength begins. Not in how loudly you respond, but in how little you need to. When someone tries to bait you and you don't bite, when a situation turns chaotic and you stay grounded, that's emotional wealth. That's strength that doesn't need to show off. And ironically, that's what shakes people the most. When they realize they can't buy your reaction, that no matter what they say or do, you've already decided what's worth your time. That kind of control isn't just stoic, it's magnetic. So from this point forward, think like a wise investor. Budget your energy. Be mindful of how you spend it and on whom. Not everything deserves your full emotional presence. Not every problem is worth solving. Not every fire needs your water. The more you value your peace, the more you'll protect it. And in that space between what happens and how you choose to react, you'll find something priceless. Freedom. The freedom to walk away, to stay calm, to remain untouched. That, right there, is your emotional wealth, and it's worth everything. 10. Flattery isn't always friendly. Sometimes the sweetest words carry the sharpest edges. We all enjoy compliments, being told we're doing great, that we're talented, smart, attractive, or admirable. It feels good. It warms us. But not all praise comes from a place of truth or care. In fact, the most dangerous kind of manipulation often starts with kind words. That's the trap. Because when you're not paying attention, flattery can become a tool used to disarm you, to lower your guard, to shift your awareness away from what's really going on. It doesn't always come with bad intentions, but that's precisely why it works so well. Praise makes us comfortable, and when we're comfortable, we stop asking questions. The Stoics teach us to be cautious, not just with criticism, but also with compliments, because both have the power to shift our internal state, if we let them. The wise mind doesn't get intoxicated by praise, nor crushed by insults. It remains steady, anchored. Marcus Aurelius said, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." That includes praise. A Stoic accepts a compliment with gratitude, but doesn't chase after it or build their identity on it. They smile, say thank you, and keep moving. Because the moment you need praise to feel secure, you become vulnerable to those who know how to use it. Flattery isn't always friendly. Sometimes it's sincere, yes, but other times it's strategic. People might tell you exactly what you want to hear, not to uplift you, but to soften you, to gain your trust quickly, to open a door that you'd normally keep shut. The compliment becomes a currency, a transaction, and if you're not paying attention, you'll start spending your energy, your time, and your emotional bandwidth on people who never really meant the words they spoke. It's not paranoia. It's awareness. And awareness is what allows you to remain sharp, even when things feel sweet. Carl Jung believed that what we choose to ignore often has the most control over us. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That applies here too. If you accept all praise at face value, if you never pause to ask, why now? What's behind this? You risk becoming someone who's easily steered by others' words. You won't even realize it's happening. You'll start shifting your tone, your actions, your goals, just to keep the praise coming. And when it stops, you'll feel lost. That's not sovereignty, that's dependency. The point isn't to reject compliments or live in constant suspicion. The point is to receive them with clarity, to be aware of how praise influences your state of mind, your ego, your decisions, to recognize that not everyone praising you is trying to help you. Some are trying to get something from you. Some are praising you so you won't notice the subtle manipulation that comes next. That's why calm is so important. A calm mind doesn't react immediately. It takes a breath, listens and thinks. It doesn't jump into trust. It observes. It reads the tone behind the words. It notices the context, the timing, the motive. Calm gives you space to ask, what's this compliment really doing here? When you stay calm in the face of praise, it unnerves people who expected you to melt. They expect you to light up, to change your behavior, to chase the feeling. When you don't, when you stay grounded, they don't know how to handle it. That's a sign you're becoming someone who can't be bought by words. And that's a powerful place to be, because it means your values, your actions, your path are no longer at the mercy of someone else's approval. Seneca reminds us that a man who is always ready to believe what is told him will never do well. Believing every kind word, without discernment, is just as risky as believing every criticism. Words are tools, and tools can build or destroy. That's why you must handle them carefully, not fearfully, just consciously. Because when you're conscious, you notice things others don't. You hear the compliment, but also catch the hidden motive. You feel the warmth of the praise, but keep one foot anchored in truth. There's also something to be said about how praise can dull your edge. When someone constantly tells you you're amazing, you may stop pushing yourself. You might begin to believe you've arrived, that there's no more work to do, that you've mastered everything, and that's when growth stops. That's when comfort becomes a cage. One of the biggest dangers of praise is that it convinces us to pause in places we're meant to pass through. It makes us linger too long on accomplishments instead of continuing the journey. That's why a Stoic, even in the face of admiration, keeps moving. Not out of ungratefulness, but out of discipline, out of understanding that there's still ground to cover. This doesn't mean you become cold or detached. In fact, a calm and conscious person can accept compliments with grace. But they do so with balance. They don't get high off them. They don't seek them out. They don't let them steer the ship. They simply acknowledge the moment, appreciate the sentiment, and return to their path. No clinging, no ego, just presence. Flattery often works because it feeds a part of us that craves affirmation. But Stoicism reminds us that real affirmation must come from within. That you must know who you are, not because others told you, but because you did the work to find out. Because you sat with your flaws, faced your weaknesses, and built your character from the inside out. When you know who you are, flattery can't control you. You can appreciate it without depending on it. You can hear it without needing it. In everyday life, this shows up in the smallest ways. Someone at work flatters you right before asking for a favor. A new acquaintance praises your values, but then slowly begins to challenge your boundaries. A person you barely know showers you with admiration, only to later reveal they need your support for something. The pattern isn't always obvious, but once you start paying attention, it becomes clear. And the calm mind, the grounded mind, the stoic mind, it sees it before it spreads. That's why stillness is a shield. It allows you to hear the compliment without letting it sneak past your guard. It lets you nod politely while keeping your eyes open. It gives you the power to enjoy kind words, but not be owned by them. And that's the balance you want to cultivate. Praise doesn't need to be feared, but it does need to be filtered. So the next time someone compliments you, pause, smile, say thank you, but ask yourself quietly, why now? Listen for the answer in their behavior, in their consistency, in what they ask of you next. And most of all, stay sharp, even when it's sweet. Because peace isn't just about avoiding conflict. It's about navigating kindness with the same clarity you'd use in chaos. That's calm. That's discipline. That's the edge that can't be dulled. 11. Walk away without a word. Some things are better left unsaid, not because you don't have the words, but because the words no longer matter. You reach a point in life where explanations feel heavy, and repeating yourself becomes exhausting. That's when silence becomes your strongest response. It's not about being cold, it's about protecting your energy. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is not to fight for closure, but to walk away without a sound. People often believe that every ending deserves a conversation, that we owe others a final paragraph, a summary of our reasons, a well-articulated goodbye. But life isn't a story that needs to be perfectly wrapped. Real endings don't always come with explanations. Sometimes they arrive in the form of quiet departures, without warnings, without scenes. And that silence, it often echoes louder than any argument ever could. Stoicism reminds us to focus on what's within our control and to release what isn't. You can't control how someone receives your absence. You can't dictate whether they understand your silence. But you can control when you're done. You can choose not to explain yourself for the 100th time. You can decide that your peace is more valuable than their reaction. And you can walk away, not to punish them, but to protect what's left of your spirit. You don't need to yell. You don't need to cry. You don't even need to explain. When a line has been crossed, when trust has been worn thin, when your spirit feels bruised, it's okay to go. Not dramatically, not with rage or revenge, but calmly, quietly. Like closing a book you've already finished reading, that's the Stoic way. No performance, no need to be seen leaving, just the stillness of knowing that your time there is done. People fear silence more than confrontation. When you fight, they can respond. When you explain, they can argue. But when you disappear without a word, they're left with themselves, with the weight of their choices, with the gap you used to fill. And in that quiet space, they often see more clearly than they ever did during the noise. Not because you convinced them, but because your absence speaks a truth your words never could. Wasting your breath trying to explain your worth to someone who never listened is a quiet kind of tragedy. Time spent trying to fix what isn't yours to fix. Energy poured into being understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. That's not noble, it's draining. And eventually you learn that the most self-respecting thing you can do is leave. Without fanfare, without a final monologue, just the soft sound of your own footsteps walking away. This doesn't make you cold-hearted. It makes you discerning, emotionally mature, grounded. You're no longer chasing closure because you've realized that closure is often just a fantasy. We think it'll bring us peace, but more often it brings us back into a cycle of justification and pain. Peace doesn't come from being heard. It comes from letting go. It comes from saying, "This no longer serves me," and honoring that statement with your actions, not your arguments. You'll notice over time that the people who truly respected you won't need an explanation, and the ones who disrespected you won't deserve one. That's the paradox. The ones who pushed you away will demand reasons, but the truth is, they already know them. They just didn't think the consequences would be silence. They expected chaos, drama, emotion. When they get calm instead, it unsettles them. Because calm is a language they don't speak. They don't know how to respond to a door that closed without sound. Walking away doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself not to stay where you aren't valued. It means you've chosen self-respect over self-sacrifice. And when you do that, you stop waiting for others to see your worth. You see it. And that's enough. Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control, and there's a deep kind of freedom in walking away. You release yourself from expectations, from explanations, from cycles. You reclaim your time, your energy, your dignity, not with noise, but with a single quiet decision. There will be moments when you'll be tempted to return, to say just one more thing, to make them understand, to respond to the message, to answer the call. But when that urge rises, remind yourself of why you left. of how many times you explained yourself, of how little those words ever changed the situation. Remind yourself that silence is also a form of strength. Let them wonder. Let them sit with the space you left behind. Let your absence be a mirror reflecting back their actions, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to walk away without a word. No revenge, no guilt, no bitterness, just peace. Aristotle once said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And walking away often teaches you more about yourself than staying ever could. It shows you what you will and won't tolerate, what you value, what you've outgrown. It sharpens your instincts, strengthens your voice, even in silence. You become less reactive, less desperate for validation, more anchored in your own center. People might say you're cold, that you should have stayed, that you should have tried harder. But only you know what it cost to remain silent in pain. Only you know what it felt like to keep giving to something that never gave back. And only you can decide when enough is truly enough. So next time someone crosses a line, don't look for the right words. Don't waste your breath trying to tie it up with logic or grace. Just go. Don't slam the door. Don't look back. Let your calm be the answer. Let your absence be the message. Because in a world full of noise and explanation, your silence will be the one thing they can't ignore. And that silence, that's your freedom, that's your healing, that's your power. 12. Let chaos collapse on its own. Life has a funny way of throwing chaos our way, doesn't it? It often feels like every time something goes wrong, we're expected to step in and fix it. Someone's upset, something's broken, or a situation spirals out of control, and the instinct is to jump in, put on the hero cape, and rescue the day. But what if the real power is in stepping back? What if the greatest act of self-control is choosing to let things unfold without intervening, even when the storm seems to be bearing down? That's not weakness. It's wisdom. Stoicism teaches us that we can't control everything. In fact, the more we try to control the world around us, the more we lose our own peace. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This simple yet profound truth underscores the essence of calm in the face of chaos. There are things in life that are simply beyond our control. We can't stop people from making mistakes. We can't fix every mess someone else creates. And sometimes trying to fix everything only makes things worse. The Stoic path isn't about rescuing every sinking ship. It's about recognizing which battles are worth fighting and which ones will take care of themselves if we simply let them. People who are in constant turmoil, who create chaos in their lives, often expect others to come in and clean up the mess. They want someone to calm their nerves, to solve their problems, to carry the weight of their mistakes. But here's the thing, when you're always running to put out someone else's fire, you start burning out yourself. At some point, you have to realize that not every problem is yours to solve. Not every sinking ship is your responsibility to rescue, and more importantly, sometimes letting things collapse on their own is the most compassionate and wise thing you can do, for both them and yourself. Imagine watching someone else's drama unfold. The instinct is there. Shouldn't I do something? Shouldn't I help? Can't I fix this for them? But the truth is, jumping in doesn't always help. In fact, it can reinforce the chaos. By rescuing people from their own consequences, you might be enabling the very behavior that caused the problem in the first place. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." What he meant by that is that true growth and responsibility come from facing the consequences of our actions. When we step in too quickly to fix someone else's mess, We rob them of the chance to grow, to take responsibility, and to learn from their mistakes. This isn't to say you should watch people suffer unnecessarily. It's not about being cold or heartless. It's about understanding that stepping back doesn't mean abandoning someone. It means choosing to let them face the consequences of their own actions so they can grow. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for someone is to stop fixing their problems. Let them feel the weight of their decisions. It's in those moments that real change happens, both for them and for you. The idea is to detach, not from caring, but from the need to control. Stoicism teaches us that we don't need to be swept away by every emotional storm around us. We don't need to react to every crisis that arises. Instead, we can observe from a place of calm, seeing the situation for what it is, not for what we wish it could be. That detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. It's the ability to see the fire burning without rushing into it to put it out. The Stoic remains composed even in chaos because they understand that their peace is their responsibility. You don't need to be on all the time, always jumping in to fix what's wrong. In fact, often, the most powerful action is no action at all. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is arguing. Voices are raised, tensions are high, and you can feel the emotional heat in the air. The usual response might be to step in, to mediate, to calm the situation. But what if instead you chose to stand back? What if instead of being drawn into the drama, you stayed centered? What if you let the situation unfold and allowed the people involved to figure it out themselves? Not out of indifference, but out of wisdom. By remaining detached, you maintain your peace and, in doing so, allow others to find their way out of their own chaos. By letting things collapse on their own, you take away the fire's fuel. People will realize that their actions have consequences. They'll start to see the importance of stepping up and taking responsibility. And what's powerful about this approach is that it's not about them. It's about you. It's about protecting your energy, your calm, and your mental peace. You can't control the storm around you, but you can choose how you respond to it. You can choose whether to step into the chaos or to remain grounded, calm, and unwavering. A lot of the time, we fear chaos because we imagine it's worse than it really is. We think that if we don't step in immediately, things will get worse, that the situation will spiral out of control. But most of the time, when we allow people to face their own consequences, they find a way to resolve the issue themselves. By stepping back, you're not leaving them to drown. You're allowing them to learn how to swim. And you're saving your emotional energy for battles that truly matter, not for the ones you can't win. There's also a sense of power in walking away from chaos. When everyone is panicking, when the world is turning upside down, your stillness becomes a beacon. It's a sign that you don't need to engage in every emotional battle. It's not about being indifferent. It's about being in control of yourself. You can watch the storm, but you don't have to be swept up in it. And the more you practice this, the stronger your emotional resilience becomes. You learn that you don't need to react to every crisis. You don't need to engage in every argument. You can choose to remain calm, to remain grounded, and to let others handle their own problems. In the end, the calm mind doesn't rush to fix what's broken around them. It doesn't get tangled in every drama, every conflict. The calm mind knows that sometimes the best thing you can do is step away, let things unfold, let them collapse. Because when they do, they make space for new growth, new opportunities, and new understanding. And in that space, you remain intact, unaffected by the chaos, and ready to move forward with clarity. The next time you're faced with a situation where you feel compelled to act, ask yourself, is this mine to fix? If the answer is no, then step back. Let the situation unfold, knowing that your calmness is not just your strength, It's the strength of your wisdom. 13. Calm isn't numb, it's mastery. Most people misunderstand calm. They see someone quiet in the middle of chaos and assume they're cold. They assume that silence means emptiness, that a calm face means a numb heart. But the truth is far more powerful and far more difficult. Real calm isn't the absence of feeling, it's the presence of control. It's not that you don't feel, it's that you feel deeply and choose, deliberately, not to let those emotions run your life. You sit with them, you hold them, you examine them, and then, like a craftsman, you shape them into something useful. Think of an artist with a block of marble. The marble is emotion, raw, heavy, unformed. And calm? Calm is the chisel. Without control, emotion just stays a block. It weighs you down. It confuses you. But when you bring steady hands to that marble, you start to shape something meaningful. You don't strike wildly. You don't rush. You take your time. You carve with intention. That's what emotional mastery looks like. Not suppression, not avoidance. Mastery. Knowing what you feel and deciding how you act in response to it. There's a common belief that the only way to prove you care is to react, to shout when you're angry, to cry when you're sad, to storm out when you're frustrated. But reacting isn't proof of depth. It's often just proof of lack of discipline. It's easy to react. It takes nothing but impulse. What takes strength is the pause, the space between emotion and action. That moment where you breathe and ask yourself, is this who I want to be right now? That's where power lives, in the gap. Stoicism, at its heart, is about that gap. It teaches us that emotions are not enemies. Even Marcus Aurelius never said, don't feel. What he said was, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The mind, when calm, becomes a fortress. Not because it locks emotion out, but because it lets emotion in without letting it take over. You don't run from the fire. You walk through it with grace. You let the heat warm you, but you don't let it burn down the house. Let's be honest. Calm can look boring from the outside. While others are raising their voices, throwing things, or slamming doors, you're just still, quiet, collected, and that stillness might make people think you don't care. But that's their misunderstanding. Your silence isn't absence, it's strength. It's the decision to hold your ground rather than be dragged into a storm. People who live in noise often can't understand what it's like to live in peace. They see calm as weakness because they only know how to be loud to feel heard. But there's a deeper kind of presence, one that doesn't need noise to be felt. You'll notice something interesting when you start to practice this kind of calm. People begin to adjust their behavior around you. Your lack of reaction becomes unsettling, not because you're intimidating, but because you're unpredictable. You become the kind of person others can't manipulate, can't guilt, can't provoke easily. That calm becomes your armor. It shields you not by shutting down emotion, but by mastering it. You feel everything, but you don't show all your cards. You care, but you don't collapse. You hurt, but you heal in silence. And when you speak, it's with intention. There's a special kind of peace in knowing that you don't owe the world every thought that crosses your mind. You don't have to explain every mood, every decision, every silence. Some things are better held within, not to hide them, but to honor them. Not every emotion needs a stage. Not every feeling needs a microphone. Part of mastering yourself is knowing which parts of you are sacred, and which ones are just passing storms. The calm person doesn't perform their pain, they process it, and in doing so, they transform it. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." But bravery isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet act of not reacting, of sitting with discomfort instead of pushing it away, of saying, "I see this pain, I acknowledge it, but I don't serve it. That kind of bravery doesn't earn applause, but it earns inner peace. It earns respect from yourself and over time from others who begin to realize how rare that strength really is. There's also something deeply liberating about not being ruled by your moods, to wake up and say, whatever happens today, I will remain centered. That doesn't mean you won't be shaken, but it means you'll return to yourself faster. You won't spiral every time something unexpected happens. You won't chase validation every time you feel uncertain. You'll become your own anchor. And that kind of self-possession, where your peace isn't dependent on the world, is rare. It's rare because it's earned, day by day, thought by thought. It's important to remember that calm doesn't mean you're done growing. It means you're growing differently. You're not growing through chaos anymore. You're growing through reflection, through deliberate action, through quiet resistance. The Stoics believed in progress, but not at the cost of peace. You don't need to break yourself to become someone new. You can change from a place of strength, and that strength is built in stillness. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't respond, that's mastery. When someone questions your path and you stay true to it, that's mastery. When life throws something painful your way and you absorb it without losing yourself, that's mastery. It's not numbness, it's sovereignty. You are not reactive. You are responsive. You move with thought, with clarity, with dignity, and that's a kind of power no one can take from you. In a world that glorifies reaction, staying calm is a rebellion. In a world that wants you to prove yourself constantly, choosing stillness is a declaration, not of weakness, but of self-respect. It's saying, I am not here to be controlled by your chaos. It's saying, I choose my peace over your noise. That's not apathy, that's alignment. So the next time someone questions your silence, or mistakes your calm for disinterest, smile gently. Let them think what they want. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to understand yourself. You're not here to react to every ripple. You're here to master the waves. And every time you choose calm over chaos, silence over noise, patience over impulse, you step deeper into your own power. And that's not numbness. That's the highest form of mastery. Remember, true strength lies in the ability to stay calm, no matter the storm. It's not about never feeling. It's about choosing how to respond. So, the next time life tests you, embrace the silence, control your reaction, and move forward with purpose. Thank you for being part of Stoic Journal. If you found this video helpful, make sure to check out the next one on the screen. Keep mastering yourself.